All right, good evening, everyone. Today is November 30th, 2021. Dear most gracious and heavenly Father, we thank you, God, for allowing us to see yet another day. Oh, God, we thank you, God, for your grace, your mercy, as well as your gift of love and salvation. God, I ask you, God, that you will bless this broadcast, as well as my guests tonight and their families, oh, God. I ask you, God, that you will bless the views as well. I ask you, God, that you would just be a comforter and a keeper to all those that are going through this time of year with the loss of family members, loved ones. You know, we rejoice and we are grateful to you for the holidays and the season and time that we spend with our families. But a lot of us go through hurts during this particular time too. So I ask God that you would comfort us and keep us during this season that we're going through, oh God. And let us know that you'll never leave us nor forsake us, oh God. I ask you, God, that you bless this broadcast and let it be a comfort and a strength to people and a go-getter for those that are going through. Let them know that through it all, you still can stand as well. We thank you. We give your name all the glory and all the honor. In the mighty and the master's name of Jesus' name we pray. Amen. Again, good evening, everyone. As you guys tune in, please share it to your pages as well so that your friends can see it as well. And if you haven't done so already, please go on YouTube and sign in, subscribe to the Marvin Bennett Jr. Show. You can watch previous episodes over the course of the last year and a half of shows that we previously did. Um, and feel free to, once we get started in the show, if you have any questions in the comments, please address the authors. If you have a particular question for one individual, or if you have a comment for the whole group, that's fine as well. What's good, Sherman? Thanks for tuning in. Um, Again, that's the Marvin Bennett Jr. Show on YouTube. I ask that you subscribe to channels. And as usual, and open up, I want to give some Born Day shout outs over the last week. You know, I want to celebrate beautiful Gwen Tyson. Happy belated Born Day again. My cousin Michelle Williams. Love you, girl. As well as my cousin Jennifer Ralston. Love you too. Pastor Artie Smith. Thank you, woman of God. Happy belated Born Day again. Adrian Mallory, my girl Red Dip down in Wilmington, North Carolina. Want to say happy heavenly Born Day to one of my first mentors back in the day on the drums. And that's the Greek man himself, Jeff Lowe Davis. I want to say happy Born Day to my niece, Kriya Postal. I love you, girl. Woman of God, Pastor Sylvia Gates as well. I'm a New York Giants fan, so I got to give a shout out to my man Michael Strahan on his 50th birthday. Also, want to say happy born day to another Jersey native, that's Mr. Steve Van Zant. I want to say happy born day to Mr. Leroy Gash, one of my high school teachers. My man Al Bain, my brother from Pittsburgh. Portia McCullum, my goddaughter, Chris Adams' daughter, happy born day. Mr. John Kraft, Sarah Menses, Uncle Quincy, salute. Desiree Rankins, what's good, Des? Love you, girl. Deidre Wooden as well. My man Keith, KK Moore, Patricia Lofton, one of my favorite lead singers growing up in church, as well. Sister Francine Brown, Peaches Horton, and Nicole Valdez and Sister Shantae. And last but not least, my man Raj, who celebrated his born day on this past week, and all the ones that celebrated. Yeah, I think they got everybody on birthdays today. And if I forgot you guys, charge it to my head, not my heart. I want to say happy anniversary, 27th anniversary to my man, my brother growing up, John Jackson, and his wife Tabitha Jackson. I want to say congratulations. Don't even know that many people. What's good, Toshiba? Glad you're tuning in tonight. Um, and I finally came up with something. Two people, as I've been reading all these birthday shout outs in the month of November, kind of realized why we got so many birthdays in November, because a lot of people that were getting busy on Valentine's Day. When you do the math, it's like that's why we have so many birthdays in November. That's a theory that I'm coming up with. I'm kind of I think November might be one of the most popular months as far as births, but I think that might have a big deal to do why. And I also want to say congratulations to Aaron and Kay Farrell on having their baby Kayla on this previous week as well. I want to say send my condolences to everyone that's going through. I want to send condolences specifically, especially today, to the 3 lives that were lost there in Oxford High School in Michigan, as well as the 8 other people that were injured. Um, just a sad tragedy where a 15-year-old boy shot up another high school, and it's like, we start hearing these different things, and the time and age that we're living in is like we're almost numb to it now. It's like it's not a shock to our system like it used to be. So, my condolences to those families that lost their loved ones on the day and those that are going through. Our prayers of heart go out with you. Um, with that being said, I want to got all the pregame. Okay. Y'all pray my strength in the Lord. So I went from not having a job to having 2 jobs. So I'm like running on fumes, literally every day, all day now. And the only day that I told them that I could not work. So the only day that I'm off is Tuesday night because I was not giving up the show. Wasn't gonna happen because I enjoy doing this. I enjoy being with you all, and I enjoy bringing you guys good content as well. What's good, Warren? Thanks for tuning in. Toshiba, thank you, girl. But tonight is a special night. I have, as you see, I have a multi-visual panel. I have some beautiful young ladies that agreed to come on and talk a little bit about a book that they co-authored together. Through it all, we're still standing. I'm gonna read the preface in a minute and introduce the ladies. What's good, Raj? You just missed your born day shout out. I don't know if you heard it or not. But I want to thank all these ladies first before I even introduce them for taking the time out to do this and share their stories. Transparency is something that's real big to me, and everybody isn't always comfortable with sharing their stories, how they got to where they are, different things that God has brought them through, whatnot, adversities in life, things that we've overcome. So I thank you, ladies, for taking this time out and also being vulnerable and transparent with sharing your testimonies, because one of the things that the word tells us, if we're believers in the word, is that we are overcomers by the words of our testimony. So just the more that we actually share our stories and what it is that God delivered us from, no matter how dark it may be, no matter how embarrassing it may be, sometimes, it is literally meant to not just encourage us and help us overcome, but to give other people hope. Because on the anniversary show, someone asked me, what was my favorite word, and I always say it's hope. Because when you lose hope, it's like when you lose hope, I don't know what to tell you when you get to that point. You know what I mean? So it's really important that we be transparent and share our stories. Let's see. Like we lost Gina. Gina? I got your message, but I don't see her. Okay. Okay, cool. All right. So with that being said, like I said, we got the ladies. Let me get the title correct. I want to read the title correctly to the book. And I'll ask that you guys will purchase it, whether you purchase it individually through one of the ladies, one of the guests tonight, or you go on. There's different ways that you go about getting that, and they'll get into that a little bit more. But through it all, we're still standing, empowered and triumphant through adversity. Okay, and I'm gonna read the preface real quick before I introduce these lovely young ladies tonight. Glasses, okay. It says, the phenomenal book is based on live experiences. Its pages may speak to some of the challenging experiences that you may have faced, or if not you, someone you know. The writers display through their stories that it takes great courage and tenacity to hold on until a storm has passed. You will find in the center of the cover, there's a picture of a palm tree with the sun in all its glory. In comparison to other trees, the palm tree appears fragile and weak, unable to weather the storm. However, just the opposite is true. Palm trees represent resilience. Similar to the writer's story, the writer's stories, the palm tree's root burrowed deep in a storm. From a biblical perspective, the palm tree has a spiritual attribute and symbolic meaning. It symbolizes freedom, righteousness, reward, resurrection, victory, and returning happily from a journey. The co-authors in this book have weathered storms that could have or should have killed them, from drug addiction to family curses to childhood drama. to cancer, divorce, loss of relationships, hopelessness, etc. With God, grace like the palm tree, through it all, they still stand. And with that being said, I want to introduce the guest tonight. Uh, we have all co-authors of this particular book. I believe it's 9 ladies all together that came together and did this. We have Sylvia James. We have Robin Longhorn. We have Gina Davis. We have Valerie Thomas. I think I butchered that. Um, Electra Willis, and last but not least, Jude Hostler. And I want to thank these ladies for taking out the time to do this. And again, I want to thank you in particular, Jude, because I think you might be the very first guest of this magnitude to actually reach out to me to ask me, could you use the platform to promote this book? So I consider it a privilege and an honor that you would even grace us or consider me to do something like this. So again, I want to thank you all for doing this. And I'm gonna let you ladies take it over from here. You kind of give us a little bit about yourselves, where you're from, and your background, and then we'll get into the conversation in the book.
So we're going to go by our chapters, and our first chapter is actually Gladys Cookie Payton, which she is not on with us tonight, and we have 8 authors that are part of this book. And so I'm Jude Johnson Hostler, and I was on Marvin's show maybe a year ago, I think just when, oh, now it's probably been longer because we're in COVID almost 2 years at this point. And so
Sorry.
I am from New Jersey, but I currently live in North Carolina. I've been here 11 years. I can't believe it that it's been that long. And so what I do as a profession, I am a therapist. I work doing counseling, have worked in the addiction world for many, many years. And now I'm doing that work, working with women and children. And I have a private practice. And I'm an evangelist at Victorious Praise. So that's where I know Marvin from. We attend church together. So this book, the thought of the book was birthed about 3 years ago. We did a retreat and talked about writing a book together and some of the things that we went through and how, you know, we had just been, no matter what was going on in our life, we seemed to weather the storm, and we know that God did that for us. And so we talked about writing a book, and one of our co-authors, Deborah, had wrote a book maybe about 6 months before we wrote our book, and she introduced us to the publishing company, and within 90 days, we got our chapters together and we wrote our book. And so it was such a blessing. The book was birthed and launched on 9/11. And we had over 175 people that were a part of that launch with us, and it was just absolutely wonderful. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about my chapter. So my chapter is about going through a really difficult divorce and how at that time in my life, it actually felt like I just wasn't going to make it through. It was one of the most difficult things I experienced in life. But one of the things was I had a great circle of friends, and I had a wonderful relationship with God. And that relationship with God even got closer. And my friends, they just circled me, surrounded me, and helped me, you know, just move through that moment. And so just being able to put that in paper, on paper to pen, and share that story with someone, because many times we go through things in life and we don't think we can make it through. And so just having that opportunity to make it through and then to be able to write about it, it's been such a blessing. So I'm just gonna I'm gonna turn it over to, I think, do you guys know the order of the chapters? Y'all jumping in. So I just wanted to just share that with you. And again, Marvin, thank you for having us on your show tonight.
No doubt. And I wanted to make the correction. I did leave out, I omitted one name, and that's Miss Deborah McKinley Hill. Thank you again, Deborah.
I think Gina is our next author.
Okay, hi, I'm Gina Davis. I'm from Asbury Park, New Jersey, born and raised, a native, and I'm still here in the same place. I actually um, wrote my chapter about my early adolescent days because I felt that it was a very pivotal time in my life and that I wanted to speak to adolescents and children and parents and caretakers and all those who have influence over children to understand that addiction does not happen or occur in a vacuum, that something happens. And for me, it was in adolescence, it was in high school days. And so I based my chapter on some things that happened early on in my life that led to a long time of self-destruction. I'm not sure um, if I were to describe my life now and my life then, I would describe it as living two lives in one lifetime. So, and with the latter being greater.
That's beautiful.
And I guess we'll talk about that later.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate that. I appreciate one thing. I've never met any of you ladies other than Jew personally. So one thing that's real big with me again is transparency. And I think it's very beautiful because sometimes it's difficult to tell some of these places that we've been delivered from and we've come from. So it's very empowering and know that Gina, you have another prayer partner for life. Your success is my success. You know, as long as God gets the glory out of all of our lives, I want to say, even though I never met you before tonight, I am proud of you and all that you have overcome.
Thank you.
Hello, I'm Sylvia James. I'm actually the fourth co-author of the book. I was born and raised in the city of Camden. My chapter is titled Lost and Found. My chapter speaks about being young, coming up in the city of Camden and becoming a product of my environment. Having no role models, no one to glean from, no one to look up to, and no real direction in my life. And at a young age of 14, being asked to leave home by my mother and being on my own in the world, all alone with nowhere to go, seeking help from people that were older than me, only to find out that it was attached and it came along with the cost. And it was very costly for me. It led me to making some poor decisions. It led me to using drugs, having children, multiple children back to back. Ended up with 6 children, lost all 6 children to the foster care system. Eventually made a decision that I needed to do something different with my life. I wasn't sure what that was, but I became open-minded. I had the ability to ask for help, and my help, the question went to God, why not me? Why am I not good enough? Why have you not delivered me? You've never heard my prayers. And what I come to find is God had always heard me. I was just not listening to him. And when I turned my ear to him and became willing to listen and follow the direction for which he put in front of me, and he used people to do so, I was able to find my way to the other side. And that landed me in Monmouth County, Asbury Park. And I have now been in Monmouth County for over 20 years. And I'll share more later when questions are asked. Thank you.
Before the next young lady goes, I just got to say, I know somebody else is from New York, but Jersey is in the building tonight. I love it.
Yes, we are.
All right. Who has, I guess, chapter 3?
Valori.
You're still muted, Valori.
Got it. Thank you so much. My name is Lori Thomas. Lovely to be here this evening. A blessing to see everyone and to feel the spirit that's right here in this virtual space. I am the founder of IWCC, the CEO of WOW Coaching and Consulting, an accredited member of the Forbes Coaches Council, and a 2021 We Inspire Movement ambassador. In my profession, I am a personal personal professional development expert. My area of expertise is organizational structure and team building. I came to this whole project. It was a blessing from God, so to speak. I had thought about and talked about and intended in my year to complete my second book. I have authored another book. The name is Possibilitology, and had never really started about it. Wrote some pages and so forth, kind of put that together, and then the way that life would have it, I met Electra Fowler and worked with her and became introduced to this project. And just, it was like, I think in the last month that I had the opportunity to join. So that's just a little background about myself, getting to know the ladies, an amazing, amazing group of phenomenal women, just delighted to be shoulder to shoulder with them in this project. With that being said, the name of my chapter is From Impossible to I'm Possible. And let's just say the context of the chapter is about resiliency. What I've learned, to make a long story short, because I know there's a few of us and so forth, but what I learned through my own experience of drug addiction, and all that afforded, imprisonment, losing my home, living on the street, so to speak, not so to speak, but literally living on the street. I learned that we are not the worst thing that has happened to us, nor was I the worst thing that I had ever done. I learned that, as long as that I kept hope, and I had been raised in a praying family. And so, I had faith to hold on to when there was nothing else. Marvin, I heard you talk about hope. Your piece is hope. My piece is possibility. I learned that, giving yourself an opportunity of grace and space in every moment, there's a new possibility available. And that's really what I'm about in my coaching business, in my practice. When I do what I do organizationally, is what's the possibility that's available to you beyond where you're sitting in any given moment. And so that's pretty much what my chapter is about. It's, like, what are the conversations and the life lessons that I learned that moved me to possibility, and my chapter, I have a few quotes about life lessons and what they mean. And one of the chapters I'll share with you is one that says, a champion is one who gets up when everybody thinks they shouldn't. And I think of when I put that in this chapter, because for me, it's synonymous with the purpose of this book and every woman that has contributed to the compilation of it. And so really excited to be here and to see everyone again after the holidays and so forth. And that's my chapter.
All right.
Lecture.
Okay, hello, my name is Electra Willis. And first, I just want to say that it is wonderful to be here sharing this space with all of these phenomenal women. I've known the majority of them for well over 20 years. And this book is really truly like a reflection of the trust that we have in one another, the relationships that we've built, and the love that we share between each other. And I just want to thank you, ladies. So my chapter is called Visibly Invisible. And for the most part, that is exactly how I had always felt my entire life growing up. I really felt like I was there, but did people really see me? I felt that I never really had had a sense of agency, did not know that that my voice mattered, that my thoughts mattered, that my feelings mattered. So with that, of course, I took that to looking for love, friendship, anything else in all of the wrong places. Um, I had some things happened to me, of course, as a child of, I'm an adult child of an alcoholic. Um, at that time, I had no understanding of the impact that that had on my life. So therefore, I took all of that hurt outside. I left home when I was 19 because I thought that was the best move. Only to find out that I again, I did a lot of geographical moves, because I thought, especially as I started to get into my active addiction, well, if I go here, if I go here, if I go here, that's going to change, not understanding and not realizing until I was, God finally, I heard Sylvia talk about how she finally listened to him. And so God finally got my attention, that I took me everywhere I went. And it wasn't about the geographical moves. It was really about, when was I ready to stop running? When was I ready to kind of face a lot of those, those hurts, those demons, those things that that led me, that had me leave my home at 19. If anyone were to look at my life, they would probably say that I had a really good home life, right? But of course, those are the people from the outside looking in. We never really know what's going on behind closed doors, right? And I grew up in that family where it was kind of like, okay, what happens in this house stays in this house, right? I don't tell the secrets. So most of my chapter really kind of goes from me feeling that way, going through my active addiction until I came into recovery. And I came into recovery 20 years ago. And God has truly just outdone himself in my life. And I will end with that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Deborah.
Hi. Just want to thank God for this opportunity to be with you guys again, my co-authors in the book. I was blessed to be a part of another anthology where we wrote about faith, fatherhood, and forgiveness. And Jude, who is my sponsee sister, was on my book launch. And then we started talking about the plans that we made all those years ago when we was at the retreat. So we got together and we did this book about recovery. So my chapter is called Blessed Beyond Measure. And I call it that because I talk about my addiction, the before, the during, and the after, and the contributing factors, which are I was molested by my stepfather from age 10 to 15. And I told everybody that I could, the adults, and because they didn't do anything, it appeared to me that they didn't believe me. And like Electra said, I kept hearing what goes on in this house stays in your house. We can't tell your mother what to do. She's grown. And I'm looking at it like, yo, I'm a 10-year-old kid. Like, why are you guys not doing anything? And so so that happened. I didn't know my biological father. And when that started happening to me, I started looking for him to no avail. I was also looking for love in all the wrong places because I was so hurt by what was going on. And I ended up getting pregnant in high school, having a baby at 16. And then my daughter's father not wanting to, after 2 months, he didn't want to be a dad anymore. And so it was kind of like hurt compiled on top of hurt. And then when I was 20, I think I was 21, I got raped by some neighborhood associates that I thought was my friend. So by the time I got introduced to the drugs later on in life, I first covered up the void with boys, little boys that's whispering sweet nothings in my ear because I was looking for love in all the wrong places. And I happened to be in a relationship with the drug dealer. And I also filled the void with him. And after he was gone, it was the first time in my life that I had been by myself. And all of those feelings and emotions just came down on me. And I started seeing visions of my stepfather. I started hearing voices. I started smelling the alcohol that was like on top of me. I started hearing everybody say they couldn't do anything. And so when I was introduced to the drugs, it took away the pain. I thought that it was the best solution that I had found in life. It took away the pain. I didn't have to feel the pain anymore. But I quickly found out because of all the consequences of using, such as going to jail after jail after jail after jail, being homeless, losing jobs. I basically felt like a little girl lost. Geographical change is jumping from place to place because I had a little bit of pride. And as I got bad, looking really bad in one place, I just left and went to another place because I didn't want anybody to see that I was toe up from the floor up. And so eventually God started putting people in my path telling me that they see something in me that I don't see in myself, which was the police officer. I got arrested by two ladies. I ran track with one sister and I played softball with the other, and I got arrested by their brother. And I begged him to let me go. And he was like, I'm going to do something that's in your best interest. And I was all happy thinking I was going to get over. And I said, what? He said, arrest you and send you to jail because you need a break. Then another judge, she told me she saw something in me that I didn't see it myself. Another lady pulled me out the soup line, talking about she sees something in me that I didn't see in myself. And I didn't know at the time because I didn't know God, that was God placing angels in disguise in my path. But then something happened. On my best day using, I would wake up. That means, you don't need no money. You ain't got to rob nobody. You ain't got to bust nobody in the head. You don't got to do a whole lot of things. But on my best day using, I would wake up in the middle of the night and say the Lord's Prayer, and I don't know where it came from. So I started thinking, and I started hearing my mother's voice telling me, I didn't raise you like that. What's wrong with you? Blah, blah, blah. And when I was using, I didn't want to hear none of that. I was like, just leave me alone. I thought that I wasn't hurting anybody but myself. But once we come into recovery, I know for me, I learned that everybody that I came in contact with, I was hurting with my behavior because I wasn't there. I was there physically, but I wasn't there for my daughter and none of my family members. And so as I started feeling like that, something just dropped in my spirit and said, I need to go to rehab. I didn't even know what that was. And I lived around the corner from one. I was born in Charleston, South Carolina, raised in Paterson, New Jersey, another rough city like Sylvia was talking about, Camden. And a rehab was around the corner for me, but I never knew what one was. And so I made a decision. Well, the judge said that if I didn't go to rehab, I was going to get 5 years in prison. And I'd been to all kind of jails, but I didn't want to go to prison. I didn't think I was bad enough to go to prison because, like I said, inside I was a little girl lost. So I went after walking into a sting the day before. I'm going to get that last high. And by God's grace and mercy, the stenographer helped me get out of that situation. I went to rehab, and I was sick as a dog because I had never stopped using heroin I was getting high every day. And so around the third day, I was amazed that I didn't use no dope. I was like, oh my God, I didn't have to use today, although I was sick. But the seasoned addicts told me to eat some candy. They told me to stand in the shower in the hottest water that I could stand momentarily. And the facility allowed me to do that. I was standing in that water about 5 or 6 times a day because that's how much I was using and my bones was aching. So I went to the program. I stayed in the program 11 months. And I got all of the tools that I needed to stay clean. And by God's grace and mercy, I just celebrated 27 years clean not too long ago, like a few months ago or whatever. I am now a LCADC. I have my master's degree. I am also a clinical supervisor. I am a minister in training. I get my license in February. I have restored the relationships with my family. And it's like so many good things. You know, I got married. My husband and I bought a house. Unfortunately, he passed away several years ago. But because of the foundation that I got in recovery and the suggestions that they told us, the predecessors like Jude and Gina, you know, told us different suggestions that stay with me today. Don't use no matter what. Go to a meeting, pick up the phone. And so I'm one and done. I have my 27 years and I have never relapsed. And I have not found any reason to go back. So that's why my chapter is called I'm Blessed Beyond Measure, because through it all, I'm still standing. Thanks.
Wow, that's powerful. Condolences on your husband, but man, that's awesome. That's an awesome testimony. Lastly, we have, I believe, Robin.
Yes,
Hey,
save the best for last. No. I'm so glad to see everybody. Oh my goodness, this has been wonderful. Thank you for this opportunity. I want to thank God for this opportunity too. I want to read something. It says, when Jesus came to earth, he had a mission, which was expressed in these words: the Spirit of the Lord God is upon me, because the Lord hath anointed me to preach good tidings unto the meek. He has sent me to bind up the brokenhearted, to proclaim liberty to the captives, and the opening of prison to them that are bound. This mission has been passed on to us. Some people talk about preaching the gospel, but may alienate those who need the good news the most. We are in a unique position to share our experiences, our strengths, and our hope in a way that broken people can understand and receive it. And my chapter is about choices, and my choices that I made. I made these choices brokenhearted. You know, I was in a relationship, you know, and eventually that relationship was ending, and I was devastated. You know, I was promised, you know, forever, you know, and I believed him. And when it was, when we broke up, I turned to drugs at that point. I mean, I had been dabbling, smoke a little weed here, sniff a little coke there, you know, have a little drink here and there, but nothing like when I was spiraling in depression. And at that time, the drugs were plentiful. Everybody I knew was smoking crack, sniffing dope, doing all kinds of things. And it was real easy for me to go and cross that invisible line from casual use to active addiction. And before I knew it, when the dust settled, I was homeless. My children were in the care of others, and I didn't know what to do. I thought I had all the answers, you know, and thank God, you know, that God had the answers, you know, and I thought I knew everything. I said, well, I'll go away for 28 days and then I'll get myself together. You know, I'll go back to work. I had the whole thing planned out, you know, and in my mind. And what I did was I eventually let somebody else take care of me, you know, let somebody else guide me. And I had went to school. I went to treatment, went to school. I was in a transitional house and they sent me to school, and I everything was paid for, so there was no reason for me not to succeed. I sat up front and had my little tape recorder because we don't, you know, back then we had tape recorders. That was even before the CDs. We had tape recorders, and I sat up front and I took it all in. And the result of that, I've been a certified respiratory therapist for the last 20 some odd years. And that has helped me to get through. I have 5 children. I've raised all of them in this house, in a house that I brought with my ex-husband. And when I say choices, because that was another promise of forever, you know, because we got married and I didn't get married to get divorced. And when that relationship was breaking up, I was devastated again. However, I made another choice, you know, and because of the women that I met in recovery, because of what I seen, they say, you want what I have, do what I do, you know, and I watched these women go through adversities. I've also seen people go out. Me too. I'm one and done too, Deb. I've seen people come in and go out, and I believe exactly what they say when they say it's bad out there. I don't need to go out there and test the waters and tell you how, you know, you should do it like this. I believe you, you know, so that never solved my problem. So I remember from the last time what happened and where I ended up, and I did not want to end up like that again. So I made a different choice the second time around. And even in that, I've become an entrepreneur. I have a business called Robeans. It's a mobile coffee truck. I bring the coffee house to you. And I've been in business since 2011. But the other thing is, like, what I've also done is been able to jump out there. Like, a lot of this is about facing your fears, you know. And even though I started a business, I was kind of creeping along, you know, saying, but it was really like a hobby until you took it serious, you know. And then I jumped out there and lived my dreams. You know, I've been, you know, once I put God first in my life and put all that other stuff behind me, God has been showing, I mean, he's been showing out in my life, you know, and nobody else gets the credit, not even me. I don't even get the credit, you know, and God has been awesome in my life, and he continues. Even, I mean, that my life is not perfect. I mean, stuff is still going on, but I have other ways of dealing with I have choices, you know, and the choices that I choose today is to stay around people that are positive, people that are of the same mindset, you know, the same, we do the same things, you know. I'm not saying I don't hang out with earthlings, so to speak, you know, because those are the people that that verse talked about, you know. How can I reach people that need God? How can I, with me telling my story to those people that maybe we don't hang in the same circles, but you know, it just happens that we sit down and talk to each other and the conversation comes up. And one of the things that I was kind of nervous about at one time was because of my profession, and I deal with, you know, I deal with narcotics sometimes. Well, not anymore. We used to deal with narcotics. I always thought that I've seen a lot of things happen, put it that way. And I didn't want to be looked at as the one, you know. So so I kind of stepped back from that and I didn't really share my story. But lately, I've been asked that, what is your story? You know, and even though I'm comfortable with this, you know, this forum with the women in recovery that I know and the close people, it's the ones that don't know me, that I don't know who God want me to touch. You know, I'm not responsible for that. That's not my job to worry about who God wants me to share my story to. I need to just share it when opportunity presents itself. So that's why I'm on here, you know, and that's why I'm happy about doing the book. I'm really happy about I'm happy about us promoting it. And I would just want to thank you for presenting this opportunity to us.
No doubt, man. we almost an hour in just getting through the introductions. So I definitely, in the future, if you ladies will be more than willing, I would like to have each one of you on individually because I definitely want to hear more about the guy's story. And again, I was getting ready to say that, Miss Sylvia, I will definitely be purchasing the book because I will admit I'm not an avid reader. Reading is not my favorite thing, so to speak. But just hear you guys intro to your chapters, I'm like, this is a must read for me. Like, and even I went on Amazon and read some of the reviews on the book, and it was good reviews on the book. I said, this is something that I definitely want to read. And again, that's through it all. We're still standing. You guys make sure you reach out to the ladies and find out how you can go about purchasing this, or what's the best way to purchase it, so that revenue will get where it needs to be. You hear what I'm saying? Let's support one another and help each other grow. You know what I mean? Like we don't need the outsiders dictating to us what it is. Hey, what's good, Nia? Thanks for tuning in, sis. Let's support one another though, and thank everybody for tuning in. But one of the again, like these stories are the one word that keeps coming up in the thread is powerful, and absolutely we know is powerful. And again, I want to thank you, ladies, because one thing that I say on the show often is it amazes me how many Christians, whether you want to call yourself a Christian, a believer, what have you, it baffles me how many people love to hear a good, powerful testimony, but never want to go through anything themselves to get to the testimony. You know what I mean? We want to hear, oh, girl, that was so powerful, but we don't want to hit the pipe ourselves. We don't want to know what it's like to be homeless. We don't know what it's like to have your family living and you're dead to them. Like we don't want to know those obstacles personally because it always sounds better with somebody else. But it just makes our testimony that much stronger when we realize, like Robin said it best, because it's not it when I look back over my life and the different things that I've been through, and the fact that I'm still here, you're looking at somebody that attempted suicide over 3 different times. You're looking at somebody that was a fiend for years upon years upon years, smoking every day. I wasn't on that hard, but weed is just the same thing. You're looking at alcoholic. You're looking at just so much, and the fact that I'm still here, I have no problem telling my testimony because it has nothing at all to do with me. It has everything to do with what God can do if we allow him to do it. You know what I mean? I say it all the time. The scripture tells us that he's the potter. He's the potter, I'm the clay. You know what I mean? And God is not getting off the throne to come down here and do anything. But what he does is he uses individuals like us, vessels that make ourselves available to say, you know what? God, I love you. But not only do I love you, I really want a relationship with you. And I don't just want to love you. I want to be in love with you, just like I would another human being. So with that comes, you know what? I got to get out of this comfort zone because you also said in your word that your ways are so far and above that I can even imagine or think. So I can't pretend to predict what God to have me go through. I did one of my daily posts either yesterday or today. We were talking about how, we got to get out of this mindset of what we don't deserve. You know what I mean? Well, why this happened to me? I don't deserve this. And we're believers, okay? And God, and we say that we trust God like we say and we trust God like we say we do. Then who are we to talk about what we deserve and what we don't deserve? Because he said, I won't put it on more than you can bear. So, yeah, addiction, it might have been hell. But guess what? You overcame it. And it had nothing to do with you or making a choice that you said, like you said, and choice is big. Choice is big. But at the end of the day, I thank God for being God. I thank God that he doesn't give us what we deserve. You know what I mean? Like that's a beautiful thing. So again, I definitely want to have all you ladies on again to go a little bit more into your stories. But the one question I did have for you ladies, actually I had 2 questions. And I'm hearing different powerful testimonies. It's like from different parameters. what made you ladies come together to do this book together, as opposed to just going solo, doing each one of you doing your own book, so to speak, or whatever the case may be, or are solo books in the work to come after this?
I can answer, well, we came together, like Jude said, we went on a retreat, all of us, and we had such a good time at the retreat. And we was laughing and joking and talking about our stories, and we were falling out on the floor, and it was wonderful. And then I believe Jude said, we should write a book. And we all was laughing and everything. But it was serious. And then it fell by the wayside, due to life's issues or just busyness, our careers, us going to school. And so I was working on my own book when the first opportunity came up for me. So I wrote that book, and then I was still furthering my own book. And like I said, Jude was on my launch. And so it just kicked everything back up again, like, okay, well, you know what? Let's go ahead. And I think she wrote something in the chat. She said, our sister Deborah has, wrote the book. She, I thank you, Jude, the way that you spoke highly of it and everything. And so the dream was birthed again. We reignited our passion to do the book. And so that's why we did it. And I am still currently working on my own book, and I'm 2 chapters away from completing my book that I started before, God presented this opportunity for me to be a 2-time #1 best-selling author on Amazon.
Yeah.
2-time. Deuces.
That's what's up. Deuces, yeah. I love it.
Now, Marvin, one thing I will say is that I'm writing a book too. I actually started a few years ago, and I couldn't finish it at that time because I wasn't healed at that place. I think that if I would have wrote it then, it would have been from a totally different perspective. And so when we began to talk about this book, one of the biggest takeaways is that when I have a call to do something, this book speaks to other women, men, children, as Gina listed, and we kind of dragged our feet on it. And so one of our sisters that was supposed to be a part of it, Marsha, she died a few years ago, so we had to dedicate the book to her. So the lesson that I took away from that is that when you're charged to do something, do it. Don't let life, get you so busy and so caught up that you don't move in that direction that God is calling you to do. So I'm so grateful that we did do the book. It's finished, it's beautiful, and it's a nice book. And I think it's just such a blessing. But my takeaway was, once we finished, that if we would have started it then, it would have, we just let life get in the way. And so because of that, we had to dedicate it to her. But I am going to finish my book that I started, and some, because we got plenty of books on the inside.
Yeah, we all got a story.
Yeah. All right, so let me ask you ladies this here too, and Gina, if you don't mind, you could go first answering this because it's been a while since we heard you. But you guys kind of gave us a synopsis of your testimony and your background. And another funny thing too, totally not to do with the book, Sylvia. It's funny, I was born and raised, I grew up there in Newark, New Jersey, graduated from West Side High School. And people find it fascinating that all my life, I never knew how bad Camden was, because the only time I ever been to Camden was for like a track meet. I had no idea that Camden was like Camden. Like Newark is Newark. That's enough to deal with. We don't care about what's going on in Chicago. We don't care about what's going on in Detroit or Compton. We just want to make it through another day here in Newark. But to know that Camden was just as bad, like, it always blows my mind when I meet somebody from Camden. Like, but I wanted to ask you ladies, and like I said, you can answer it first if you like, Gina. But to go from hell, that sounds like the best way to place it. At that lowest point, at that particular time, I think Sylvia, you said 6 children being taken away. Deborah, you mentioned going to jail, being faced with going to prison, not jail. And for those of us that know a little about the streets, it's a big difference between jail and prison.
Yeah.
And if you don't know the difference, then thank God that you don't know the difference. But you know, what was it like for you? What is it like for now for you ladies to go from that point at the lowest point of your hell season to not ever thinking that you would be here to being here now?
Well,
What is that experience like for each one of you ladies?
so my chapter is called Dream Chase. And the reason why I titled it that because I came from a dysfunctional family. I came from a family where there was a lot of alcohol and there was a lot of drugs. And my mother had 6 children when I was a kid. She had 6 children and I was the 3rd born. And everybody on top of me was either a drunk or IV drug user. And we were all stair steps from me down. We were all 9 months apart. So it was 4 of us. And even they turned that way, but I didn't. So I didn't look to drugs as a younger person. I was always busy, active, doing all kinds of things. I swore off I wasn't going to do this, that, or other things that got me in trouble. And I did well, in school. But when I got to high school, I felt really socially inept because I always felt like I always less than and not worthy of because of what I was being raised in. And when I got in high school, everything started to fall apart. And it fell apart because I wasn't socialized, because in our house, everything stayed within our house. It was enough of us in the house to make sure that we didn't have to go outside for entertainment. We couldn't afford to go anywhere. Today, I'm the only one of my friends who can't roller skate. So we couldn't go outside the house. So everything that we did, my mother said that if her kids were going to get in trouble, they were going to get in trouble at home. So everything we did came in our house. And so that kind of like put me in a position where I wasn't able to keep up with the outside world, although I was very smart, very articulate, very with it and doing things that nobody else in my family was doing. I got to high school. High school was I bombed at high school. I made it through freshman year, but junior year, I stayed in the bathroom, smoking weed, cigarettes, and cutting class all day long. My mother said, my mother was taking me back to school, and the principal said he was tired of seeing me in his office. And my mother said she was tired of bringing me to school. And then at 16 years old, I said, and I'm tired of walking to school. So I'm going to do you both a favor and I'm going to quit. And neither one of them tried to stop me. And I know why my mother didn't try to stop me, because my mother did the very best she could. You know, I loved her with all of my heart, but she just wasn't able to give me what she didn't have. And so that piece of my life right there opened the door for anything else to happen. I started having babies at 16. So I started having babies. I started trying to find ways to take care of them. So I turned to the streets. So started selling drugs. And before you know it, I became my best customer. My children, and one day I left the house with my kid's father. We went to one of his relatives' house and stayed for 5 days. And when I got back, my youngest child was in the hospital and had been there 3 days. And when I got to the hospital, she was under the custody of the Child Protective Services. And they took one look at me and said, "You can't take care of yourself, so you can't take care of her." And that was the moment. That was the moment that broke me. That I was incapable, that I realized I was incapable of taking care of myself, and I couldn't take care of my child. And at that point, I was broken. I went to a 28-day rehab. I even left there prematurely because of my social inability to socialize. My friends on this platform with this thinking like, we see that now, G, we see that now, you know, but through my inability to be able to socialize, I just lost my train of thought on there, but through my inability to socialize, my counselor, after being in treatment like 26 days, was like, well, you know, I don't know if we really helping you. And of course I said, and I don't know if you are either. And I walked out of treatment. And I was like, you know, when you sign yourself out of treatment, they don't let you stay in population. Like they walk me down the hallway and I'm sitting in the room by myself, feeling like the biggest failure in the world. And I just really not only messed up everything for myself, but for my kids too. And it was one man, his name was Smitty at New Hope. He walked me out of population. He said, it ain't no kid. He said, it ain't no meet and make us make it. My sister came to pick me up. I ain't said a word all the way home. We got in front of the Center of Love. I said, let me out. I stepped into the recovery realm December the 17th, 1989. And by God's grace, I have not had to repeat this more than once. I sit here right now in front of you with 31 years clean and sober. In 17 days, 32 years, God willing. I walked out of that rehab and my daughter came home with me. And she's 35 today, you know, so like being on that side of the situation and being on this side of it, it's two different worlds. I know so much more about life on this side of it. I didn't have the skill set over there, and I didn't have the people to lead me and to show me and to guide me. When I got to high school, my older siblings had already quit. My parents, my grandparents were uneducated. They worked. They were vested in work. They weren't vested in career. And so when I started to tell my children they needed, and I have 4 kids. I pushed 4 times, let me put it that way. When I started telling them that they needed to get an education, I felt really hypocritical because I was a high school dropout. I decided to go back to school because I needed to practice what I preached. I needed to be an example for them. And with God's grace, I went back. Oh, I can't even tell you how many times I started and stopped. But in the beginning, I started a lot. If they let me out for a vacation, I was back in 2 years, that type of thing, until I got tired of doing that. But I went from being a high school dropout to graduating from 3 colleges. And today, I hold a master's degree too for over 15 years. Not only do I hold a master's degree, I'm dual licensed. I'm an LCSW, a LCADC, a CCS, a grief recovery specialist. I work in my community. I work with just about in every arena of addiction treatment, and I have my own private business called Reset Place. I do therapy. But again, there's nothing that can compare to what God has done in my life. And I give God all the credit because I didn't have sense enough to do it. But he saw fit And there's one other thing that I want to say too, that has really, really touched my soul, touched me to the depth of my soul. Of those 6 kids that my mother had when I was a kid, I'm the only one living. I have a younger sister, but I wasn't raised in the house with her because I was out on my own by the time she was born. So she's raised up with my kids. But it is very, very sad. I get sad all the time when I think that I'm growing old without my siblings or my parents. And in this process too, I was married. I had a husband. We dated 5 years and got married. And we stayed together till death did us part. And he passed away. And to this day, I have not found one reason to give up this lifestyle that I have, this recovery. It has been the greatest gift that God has ever given me. And just for today, I'm going to stay. I hope I answered your question.
Most certainly did. Thank you so much. Thank you for your candidness. How would you answer that, Sylvia?
Marvin, when you asked the question, my eyes just well up. It's so surreal when I think about the pain and I think about wanting so desperately to get out and not knowing how, coming from a family of women who were on welfare. And I always believed that was the way, hence the fact of why I had 6 children, as being one of the reasons outside of addiction and tricking and all those other things that go along with it. And as hard as it is to think back, to see myself where I am today, I was a high school dropout. I always lied about graduating high school. I had never done it. When I made a decision to do some things differently, it came from believing in myself and believing what some people said to me. Something about you is different, they'd say. You're not common. And I never understood what that meant. But what I did come to understand is that I was a product of my environment because I was led to be that way. I was curious to be that way. I did some things in my choices that landed me that way, but that's not who I was. So who I was stood up and became bigger than who I thought I was, right? So getting here and being on this side, I like to talk about where I'm at, but I also talk about the pain because when I tell my testimony, a lot of times people talk about the cars and the houses and all these things, but tend to not talk about the pain that it took to get there. And Jude said, like, she's writing her book, and if she had done it sooner, it would not have been well because she wasn't healed. Today, I'm healed. I sent him back to school, graduated, high school diploma. From there, I went to college, got an associate's degree, went back, got a bachelor's degree. I now claim a master's degree that I got May this year. To God be the glory. I have been in the field for over 15 years, and that was God, because God allowed me to work in a field with no credential, with no education. And I know where I am. I'm there because God placed me there, and what God has given me can't no man take it. So because he has moved me the way he have, I know that he is the center of my life and I take him wherever I go. So the answer to the question is that it's very surreal and it still doesn't feel like I'm here. I feel like I have to pinch myself sometimes. I now have a relationship with my children. One of the hardest hits that I took, I'm going to say this and I'm going to leave it there, is losing my son. And when I lost my son in 2013, I lost a great part of me. And I beat myself up for a long time because I felt that had I made better choices in my life, I'd have been a mother for my son where he could have made better choices. However, I know God don't make no mistakes. And I take that pain and I've gleaned from it and I've grown from it. And it's helped me to heal and build a relationship with my other children. And through God's grace and his mercy, he has redeemed the time, and he has brought relationship and wholeness to my family. And for that, I'm grateful. That's all I have.
Absolutely. And it's funny that you were mentioning forgiveness, because I always tell people, real quick, Sharonette had made a comment earlier too. What happens in the house stays in the house. The worst thing we could have ever done to our families. And I'm glad that you said that, because that was just confirmation. I was going to hit on that for all the parents that's out there that's watching this, teenagers, whoever's watching this particular broadcast. That's something that we have to get out of our Black culture.
Mm-hmm.
It must be eradicated. It has to be gone. We got to stop doing that. And again, I'm so sorry for what happened to you, Deborah. But there should never be a situation where one of our young ladies come tell an adult that they're being violated and nothing is done. I don't care even if they're lying about it. It needs to be addressed to find out if it's a lie. Something needs to be done. And for all you mothers out there that don't see anything wrong with your man sleeping with your daughter, it's funny because it hit so many nerves for me just hearing you talk about that. You know, people talk about how they can't watch the different things with police shooting and all that there. I can watch the movie Roots. I can watch the whole Roots series weekly, once a week, before I could ever watch the movie Precious again. And it was because of the way Monique portrayed that mother. For you to be up there mad because your daughter, your man is sleeping with your daughter, but you're allowing it because you want to keep a roof over your head, whatever the case may be. I don't care what the circumstances is. This has got to end. It has to stop. Because it's not only causing trauma within you, it's not only leading you to drugs, alcohol, promiscuity, whatever you want to call it, is affecting that young child. You know what I mean? So let's stop allowing our children, who we're supposed to protect, whether we want to or not. No child that was ever born, ever asked to be here. That is not their fault. We got to stop allowing our young ladies, and boys too. You know what I mean? Boys too. Boys get molested as well. Like,
Yeah.
let's stop. You know what I mean? Let's break this curse. Let's break this cycle. And if you say if something is wrong, if you feel like people are looking at you inappropriate, they make you feel some kind of way, talk to somebody. Please talk to somebody. And parents, when your children bring these things to you, don't, that's just her being fast. Okay, well, ask yourself, what has she seen? How has she seen me live my life to make her act so fast or act so grown, so to speak? It wasn't just given to her, like she wasn't just that way. It's a reason that she's acting that way. You know what I mean? Let's do our due diligence in protecting our youth. You know what I mean? Because that's one of the ways that we get our community back. And it's something that's near and dear to my heart. We have to do better in that particular area. What goes on in this house, everybody that's watching this broadcast, even the ones on the panel, we have heard that countless different times in our life. Like, that's just the way it was. What goes on in this house stays in this house. What goes on in this house stays in this house. But what goes on in this house stays in this house, and I come tell you, don't get mad when you don't do nothing about it, and I go tell somebody else. When I go talk to my teacher that I trust, when I go talk to Sister Johnson at church, when I talk to Ned the wino out there on the corner, because I know Ned ain't going, he just out there to listen and give me good advice. You know what I'm saying? So at the end of the day, man, let's do a better job, man, of just really protecting our youth, man. I didn't mean to get off track on that there, going a little tantrum, but that's something that has to stop, man, because there are too many people that are suffering. There's too many people that are suffering in silence, and for too long. You know what I mean? You said this happened to you when you were 10 years old, and none of us heal overnight. Even when God delivers us from a thing, sometimes He may remove it instantly, but it's still affecting us from all the buildup of the years that we had to endure. So you know what I mean? Let's do better, people. Let's do better. Okay. Let me get to Alexa. Alexa, would you mind answering that question for me?
Absolutely. So as I'm sitting here and I'm thinking about that question, and I'm like, wow, from then until now. Well, the first thing that I have to say is that it really took me a lot of um unpacking, so to speak. That's one of the terms that we use in in our profession, in our field. I'm also a therapist. So I really had a lot of unpacking to do. And the reason I say that is that when I tell you that I was such a master of I guess being a chameleon, and part of it is because, like a lot of the other panelists said, people always said to them, well, there's something different about you. You shouldn't be here. You shouldn't, you don't even look like you belong out here. I remember hearing that so much. And then coupled with that, I actually came from a two-parent household. I was an only child. Everyone always looked at me like I was that girl that had it made. I grew up in a beautiful home, all of those things. And so for me, when I fell into that lifestyle, it was so hard for me to identify with what I saw other people going through, and who I had become. It was so hard for me to really get in touch with and identify that I am that same person that I'm out there smoking crack with. That's me too, So when I tell you that I am not a one and done, it took me 5 treatment facilities to get to the place that I am today. And that's again because there were so many masks, Marvin. I had so many layers that needed to be uncovered, and and had no clue about it, had no understanding. People talked about I wore a mask. I'm like, well, what are you talking about? Right? So when I tell you that it took me to truly hit bottom, right? I have 3 children. My children were also taken care of by other people, but let me tell you, and people used to say, aren't you angry at your mother for this? Absolutely not. My mother is my heart. She is the light of my life. She told me when I had my 3rd child, I can't do this not one more time. I cannot sit here and take care of this child, because if I do that, you will never get your life together. My mother, and it broke her heart more than it would ever break my heart, actually turned my child over to the system. She said, I want to see what you're going to do. I know. I mean, I always had love for my children. I just didn't know how to take care of them. I didn't know how to take care of me. How much I take care of these kids. But I tell you this, the love that I had in me for that little boy, that was the one thing. There's something that we say in recovery is it doesn't matter what gets you here, it's just what keeps you here. So I'm gonna tell you, my child brought me to recovery 20 years ago, and that is when I truly started that journey. I started that journey of, people, we call it being in recovery. I started the journey of discovery because I had no clue who the hell Electra was. So as I started to see and uncover that I finally realized I do have agency. I am an independent thinker. I can make choices on my own. I don't got to listen to what other people tell me no more. I don't got to believe those lies that everybody told me about, oh, well, you too pretty, you too this to be out here. Guess what? You got a whole bunch of beautiful crackheads out there, right? So what I had to understand was that, you know what? I had to take charge of my life. I had to make a decision that I was worth more than all of the things, see, it's about the negative thinking too, right? Because nobody really ever told me I wasn't no good. It was about how I felt based on what I saw growing up, right? I grew up with a father who never nurtured me, never told me that he loved me, never any of those things. So in my mind, right, I talk about being invisibly visible. In my mind, that means you don't really see me, you don't really love me. So that's how that translated to me. And so as I started to really get in touch with these things, there was a time I couldn't talk about my father without, I mean, crying ugly tears. I am able to actually talk about not only just that relationship, I'm able to talk about the good times too. I can remember my father in some fond ways where that was never part of my conversation. He was a no good, dirty bastard. Okay. So when I think about where I came from to where I am now, it took all of that, I too I'm probably the baby of the bunch. I've been a therapist since 2013. I also have 3 degrees, my associate's degree, my bachelor's degree, my master's degree. I can put it out there that there are also 2 other panelists on here that we also embarked on a doctorate program, and we're going to get back to it. And that's just, that's me. That's my story in a nutshell.
All right, Valerie, then Robin. We'll wrap it up with Robin.
It's Valori, and it's okay.
Valori.
All the time. It happens all the time. I'm just so moved by the stories that are being shared and the authenticity, because real is real and you can feel it. You know it when you hear it, and it moves you. For me, clearly I'm not where I started. My whole journey, oh my God, it really started as a kid. I was in college at 16 in the 70s, in the middle of Vietnam and civil rights, and being a kid in college and being bright, really looking to fit in and belong. And there was a big gap. And so, I found myself with people and places that I had no business. And, which led me to spiral and end up, I always have to pray on it when I tell my story, because it lives with me every day. And that's part of what keeps me honest around it. It lives with me all the time. I'm clear that, as the sisters say and the mothers say in church, I don't look like what I've been through, but it never gets past me. It never gets past me. And so, when I look at where I am today, and where I came from, it got so bad. If you can even think about this, I know we all live in different places, but I share this to illustrate and to keep it short. If you live in like a metropolis type of area where there's a subway and people are commuting and there's a rush hour and so forth, like it is in the tri-state area here, or in New York, right? I'm in Connecticut now, but I grew up in New York City, in Harlem. And if you can imagine this scenario, it's rush hour and everybody's on the platform and rushing to get into the train and, find a seat. And every so often, there'll be a day when the train car is empty and you're like, oh my gosh, you're going to get your seat. And then you step in and you realize why it's empty, because you smell them before you see them. And so, that's where I was at a particular time. And what I learned is, even making no decision is a decision still. Mm-hmm. And couldn't quite figure out, like how I got there. And so it was like hieroglyphics. How do I get out of this? what do I do? And not that I didn't have faculty, I did. It was, actually taking the steps to do so. Until I got to the point where, it's true, where you reach the point of being sick and tired of being sick and tired. And that changed, turned it around. At least it was the beginning of it. I'm not, listen, I'm right there with you, Electra, because I checked into one facility, and let me tell y'all, I was there for 3 years because I kept what we call violating, again and again, because the place that the facility it was located in was exactly where, I was going crazy. That's what I call it, my going crazy days, right? And so everything that I had known was attached to the insidious way that I was living. And so when I got freedom, I that's where I went until I didn't. And I'll never forget a counselor who said to me, you'll know when you're done, when you don't have space for this crap anymore. And I got what she meant by that, right? Was like, you don't have space for the people and the places that are doing things that you've outgrown, that you're not there anymore. And that really began my journey. And when I think back and I think of myself as a child, I remember a conversation at Sundays dinners with my mother on Sundays, and she would be talking to us and, like, well, what do you aspire to be? What do you want to be? Is what she said, when you grow up, like, what is it that you want to do? And even as a kid, my thing was advocacy, and the stuff that I've seen in the community and with our neighbors and so forth. And even as a kid, I was always like the peacemaker or getting people together. And I touch on that because, when I look at where I am now and I look at who I am now, I'm grateful for the divine that is in all of us, that has sustained us. And because I'm clear that I was at a loss at a particular time, and faith and grace is what pulled me through, and I call them angels, like certain people that come into your life that say a word or touch you in a certain way that give you that motivation. But that really what it is for me. And so when I thinking about where I am now, I'm in awe. Listen, there are times when I'm just like weeks where I'm just crying. I get up in glory. I get up, and maybe I'm not feeling or whatever, or my mind is going one way and the body is going the other, right? But I even get tickled because I have the faculty to experience it and can change it, In my profession, I'm known as the possibilitarian. And not for nothing. I really do practice it. I really do live it because, we are exactly what we make up about ourselves. And I learned, about people through all my experiences from being in not in jail, and sharing a cell with a woman who allegedly had killed her mother and father. Shoot. In the first couple of days, it was like, tough girl and all this kind of stuff. But as it went on and I was there and had to share space with her, it became about being people in the weirdest circumstance. And those things are the lessons that I've gleaned to that have created who I am in this day. So, I can get up in the morning and be crying all week in terms of gratitude and of grace, in terms of having faculty, in terms of even still being here and having something to say and wanting to offer, because sometimes you get to a point in life where you're done. Let me just live out. Let me just do, it's like doing time. Let me just do what I do and that's it. But to have a mind and a heart to contribute in a way based upon my own experience is what, where I find gratitude and where I find my space, my niche here and now.
Awesome. Absolutely awesome. Ms. Robin?
Yeah. Thank you everybody for sharing your stories and stuff. And I'm getting it. Well, I know most of you ladies, but Valoria, it's really nice to get to know you a little more intimately. I think about if I had not gone through what I've gone through, I wouldn't be where I am today. And I don't regret any of it. Would I choose it if I had a choice? No. but the fact that I've gone through, if my life had taken any other direction, I would not be where I am today. And that's what I find what I'm grateful about. When I wake up in the morning and I say, thank you, God, it didn't have to be me. There are people that I used to get high with that aren't here anymore, or haven't chose this lifestyle, still out there struggling. I say, it's hard to be a career crackhead, because that stuff, you get wasted away. You might have been 300 pounds at one time, but when dust settles, it's your skin and bones. And I was the one that, people would come by my house and, I was this social person anyway, before all this. I like to have, dinner parties and things like that. And so while that was happening and people were coming by and, bringing, packages and stuff like that. And, I didn't think of anything. It was there, it was the 90s, late 80s. And it was plentiful. At one time we thought that was too expensive for us, and then for some reason, we don't get into that. So it became affordable.
Yeah.
That's a whole nother topic.
Yeah.
It became affordable in our community, and it devastated our community.
Affordable.
Yeah, conveniently affordable, and everybody that I knew was getting high, and but I was still trying to keep this sense of normalcy. I would be the one to want to play chess and backgammon and all that stuff. And people were like, get out of here with that. But I was trying to keep, I knew I was hurting myself, but I was trying to keep one brain cell alive, so I had something to work with. And like I said, before I knew it, I had crossed that line where I wasn't just socially using, I was using because I had to, and I couldn't say no. When somebody knocked on the door, I would tell myself I wasn't getting high today. As soon as somebody knocked on the door, I opened it and start that cycle all over again. And I had no clue that there was a way out. I had no clue, because the people that I knew that were going into treatment or into going to meetings and stuff like that were sitting in front of me, so that was never the solution for me, and God intervened, and I was pregnant, and I had my child. And when I went into the hospital, went into labor, and I went into the hospital after a night, and I was afraid that I was going to jail. So I told on myself, and I didn't know that telling on myself was going to get me help. I wasn't looking for help. I was just looking for a way out, because my life I have became homeless. I had became penniless. I had a few dollars left, but that wasn't going to sustain me. And my kids were scattered. And I had a great idea. I'll tell these people, and they'll say, good, Robin, she really wants some help. Let us help her. And they told me I need to go into treatment. And I said, okay, but I still had some money. So I had a few more days in me. Not that it was a lot, but I had a few more days in me. But what was devastating to me was I had never been without my children, and that was the lowest and the most embarrassing time of my life. The shame was what kind of I was feeling while I was out there, and it just was shame. And what I thought people were saying about me and all that stuff, it was stuff that I was saying to myself. And I got turned away from a lot of places, and thank God they did. If they had opened that door, if my father said, if I had, went to him and he was able to help me one more time, my life wouldn't be where it is today. And I thank God that, all doors were closed to me, and I made the phone call to have somebody come and pick me up and take me to a place that was already set up for me. All I had to do was surrender, and I still went there a little kicking and screaming, because I still had that. I still wanted to get high. I wanted to be sent off, with one last one, and thank God they didn't stop anywhere. They just kept driving and driving and got me where I had to go. And they found, like it was a weekend, and they said, well, we don't know if you're supposed to be here because the office is locked, and I said, okay, well, let me have somebody come and pick me up. And as I was making my phone calls and nobody was answering, the woman had sat down. She sat down at the table, at the desk, and she looked down at that blotter, and it had my name on it. And she said, "You have a bad." In that same moment, divine things happened. In that moment, when she saw my name, I surrendered, because she told me I could stay there for a weekend and work it out, And in that moment, I had surrendered, and I can't say, all the doors flew. It felt like doors. In hindsight, it seemed like doors flew open. After that, one second, my battery's getting low. It seemed like all the doors flew open. It was still some work to do. It wasn't like things magically happened. I thank God, that I did surrender, and he placed so many people in my life, that changed my life, so many people I give credit for. Like, I thought I knew what I wanted. I was a high school dropout too. I went and got my GED, and I thought I was stuck. I got my GED. I was employable. I had some skills, but I really wanted to walk across the stage. I had never walked across the stage, and God afforded me that luxury of walking across the stage and get my degree. And there's so many blessings. I can't even begin to. We ain't got time for all that. So many blessings that have happened, and they continue to be happening. The other side is beautiful. And that's why I don't feel the need. Not that I don't think about it. I'm not saying that, I'm magically, my mind don't think about what a little pretty drinks, those little champagne or those pretty drinks they got now, and the flavored vodkas and all those things that they advertise on television. I'm not saying that I wonder what those things taste like, or that person that I used to get high with that's smoking weed, and they're still functioning. Like, how can they do it? Maybe I could, that those thoughts go through my mind, but I play the tape. I play the tape. I don't want that life. I'm happy, drinking coffee. I'm happy drinking Robeans. That's enough for me.
I need some more Robeans, Robin.
I got you.
Marvin, can I say one other thing
Sure. Go ahead.
about our lives? I just want to say that I truly believe that there was always a higher calling on our lives. I don't think that it was just a happenstance or a coincidence that I ended up in the situation that I was in. Because when I look at the situation now, generational curses have been broken. Like, I came from a whole crew, aunties, uncles, everybody. And none of my kids have ever been addicted to drugs. None of them have been teenage parents. Nope, let me take that back. My oldest son was a teenage parent. My daughters didn't have children before the age of 20. And so these things mean more to me than the things that I went through. So I'm just saying that, like, it was for a greater level than me. And that's what I believe about my addiction. It wasn't just for me.
Wow. That is, man, listen, all these stories are totally awesome. I appreciate you ladies again. And the most importantly, I think that you all would agree with me. And this is like, as I'm listening to you guys, you ladies, I'm sorry, continue, tell your stories. Is like the one thing that keeps coming in my mind, like, is, Lord, I thank you for your faithfulness. Lord, I thank you for your faithfulness.
We can rock on that.
Yeah, even when we lost faith in ourselves, God said no. Yeah, you're gonna hit rock bottom. And guess what? You're gonna either go underneath rock bottom. But guess what? I'm gonna put you in a place where when I get you out, you're gonna know you ain't have a daggone thing to do with it. Mama didn't help you get through there. Daddy ain't help you get through there. The kids' love ain't help you get through this. Nobody brought you through this but me. So it just makes me say, God, I thank you for your faithfulness. Not our faithfulness to you, but your faithfulness to us.
Yes.
We can't stress that enough, because without God, we are nothing. The alarm clock does not wake us up in the morning. The dog barking does not wake us up in the morning. Like, it's nobody but his grace and his mercy. And I think one time, one of the things that I was talking about earlier about people don't like to go through testimony, and I'm gonna wrap up with this, but I think most importantly that, it's like, we believe that God has no respect of person. And my favorite character in the Bible is Job. And it is not for the reasons that most people think. Like, Job had his one thing was, for God I live, for God I die. And I always thought, man, David, awesome story. Paul, awesome story. All these other people. But if I could ever get to a place personally where I could make up in my mind and say to God, whatever you bring my way, whatever you allow to happen in my life, I'm going to yet serve you. I'm going to yet trust you. I'm going to yet believe in you. You know what I mean? And the one thing that I take away from that story so often is, and I make sure that I try to tell people as often as I can, is, if we as individuals could ever get to the place where we have enough faith in God as God has in us. Because when you look at the story, Lucifer and God was in heaven. They had a cold conversation, paraphrase real quick. But the devil told God Almighty, he said, the only reason that Job praised you like he do is because look what you gave him. There's nobody in the earth that's walking the earth that's not going to deny you if you don't bless them. If you don't, you know what I mean? And the Lord said, you can do anything you want to. Yet will he serve you. The only thing that you can't do is you can't take his life. So if the God that I serve has no respect of person, that means that God had more faith in Job than Job had in God. Because he literally mentioned Job by name. Have you considered my servant Job? So if I can ever get to that place where God has enough faith in me that say, devil, whatever you bring his way, he's going to serve me. He's not going to give up. There's no amount of drugs in the world that he's going, you know what I mean? There's no deterring him. There's no women. There's no alcohol. Been there, did that. But yet and all, he saw fit to use us. And I thank him daily, but most of all, I thank him for his faithfulness. And again, before we get out of here, you know, either Deborah or Jude, you guys can let everybody know how to get the book, purchase the book. But I definitely want to do that. And while we're here, I didn't know about that. But I also, Robin, I want you to promote your coffee. You know, let people know out there how to contact you to get your coffee for all the coffee drinkers out there, as well. But and the last thing I had to say was, before we wrapped up, was I thank you, ladies, again. And we're gonna sit tight once for a quick second, so I can formally thank you, ladies, again after we get off the live. But I wanted to let you ladies know, and I was kind of mad because I believe it was Gina it was Valori that stole my thunder by mentioning it. But it's like, I thank God that we don't look like what we've been through. You know what I mean? Because when I'm looking at my screen, I see one handsome guy and 7 beautiful women. That if you hadn't told us what it is that you ladies have been through, nobody would ever believe you. Nobody would believe you because you don't look like it. No one looks like they are a recovered crackhead. And again, that's just thanks to God Almighty for his faithfulness. Because I know people that have recovered. I know people that have beautiful testimonies. But guess what? They look like the testimony that they look like all the hell that they've been through. And they thank God they still here and things have turned around for them, but they look like it. You ladies are absolutely beautiful queens, and I appreciate you ladies for taking out the time to do this. And again, I definitely want to get with each one of you individually, so we can do another show with each one of you ladies where you had a time to share your testimony and your story, because I believe that it's going to help people. As we were doing the broadcast, I already had some people in mind that if you haven't seen any other show, I'm gonna send you this one here because you got to see this one. So I thank you, ladies. But how can they contact you guys? I know I seen on the flyer that Jude that you sent me where you ladies do speaking engagements, you do different things. How can they contact you all, and how can they also go about purchasing one of the books?
I put my website in the chat, and Robin just put her roll beans in the chat. So if we put it in the chat, can you send it out?
Okay, yeah.
Yeah.
What I'll do is I'll copy it from the because like I said, we're going to be on for a quick second afterward, so I have time to get it out of our chat on here because it's not ours. They can't see our chat on Facebook, and what I'll do is I'll put it on the thread on Facebook.
Okay.
That people can reach out to you guys, but you guys, you definitely reach out to these ladies about purchasing a book. I would encourage each one of you all, everybody that's watching, everybody under the sound of my voice, to purchase this book. I think it'll be a good read, as well as don't just purchase one. We got multi-authors, so let's purchase many. And I believe that they'll make beautiful Christmas gifts.
That's right. Give them to friends.
Yeah, absolutely. Even if whatever the case may be, like you might, whether it's not for Christmas, whatever the case may be, they stories have touched you. You know, a family member that's going through, or you know, you don't want to seem all judgmental, and you want to stop being that person. But you know to do better, and you know to do. Thank you, Lord. Thank you, Lord. One last point that I did want to make. Addiction. Addiction is a sad reality in our community, not just in the Black community. I lived in Little Rock, Arkansas for 8 years. I seen what meth does to the white families and other families out there. I seen what opioids do. Addiction is addiction. And many people are victims of addiction. But please, again, like we got to protect our youth. I need for everybody, young and old, to stop taking addiction so personally. And what I mean by that is, yeah, you're going through in life. Mama's on drugs, daddy's on alcohol, so you don't feel the love that you feel you're required to exist in this particular realm. I said all that to say this. No one chooses addiction. Addiction is not a choice, it's a sickness. So don't penalize these people because they fell victim to being an addict. No one ever says, well, I never want to speak to you again. Why would you choose cancer over your own children? Why would you choose cancer over your old family? No one does that. First minute we hear about cancer, oh my God, is there anything that I could do?
Mhm.
You know what I mean? We need to start treating addiction with the same level of respect because it is not as simple as a choice, or it's not them choosing the drug, the alcohol, the sex, whatever their addiction is. It's not them choosing that over them. It is a sickness. Let's treat it as such, people. Please, 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 please. Hey, what's good, Sister Sharia? Thanks for tuning in. Again, but what I'll do is I'm gonna end the chat, the live, but I'm gonna go back on the live once we finish wrapping up and put the information out there for you all to be able to purchase the book and the coffee as well from Robin as well. And again, I thank you ladies for doing it. I thank you guys for spending the overtime with us and being a part of the show. I thank you guys for all the comments. I didn't really get into a lot of comments tonight because I was so caught up in the conversation. But thank you guys for your comments as well. We didn't really have any questions tonight. We was all pretty much comments. So thank you all for your comments. And as I say every week, remember, each day that God allows us to see, He gives us two things. He gives us a choice and a chance. What choice are you going to make with the chance that God gives you? And DeAndre and Lisha, know that Daddy loves you intentionally, but I also love you unconditionally. Till next week, you guys have a good one. You ladies sit tight.